Marcus Chen woke in the royal medical sanctum, his body wrapped in healing light and strange devices. The first thing he saw was Ethan's face hovering above him, tears streaming down the boy's cheeks. "Dad!" Ethan cried, throwing his arms around his father. "You came back. You promised, and you came back." Marcus winced at the pressure on his wounds, but hugged his son tight anyway. Some pain was worth enduring. "I told you I would, buddy. I never break my promises to you." King Velros stood nearby, watching the reunion with an expression that might have been a smile. His silver eyes were thoughtful, carrying the weight of decisions made and plans set in motion. "You were unconscious for 3 days, Ambassador," Velros said. "Your wounds were severe. My physicians were impressed that you survived at all. They are beginning to believe that humans are incapable of dying from anything less than total destruction." Marcus laughed weakly. "We are stubborn that way." "Indeed you are." The king stepped forward, his 4 hands clasped behind his back. "While you recovered, I have been busy. There are matters we must discuss." He activated a holographic display showing the Sithrak warlord's fortress, a massive space station hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of Consortium territory. "The warlord who ordered the attack on your son believes he is safe," Velros said. "He believes we will complain to the Galactic Concord, file protests, and ultimately do nothing. He has made this calculation because it is what we have always done before." "And now?" Marcus asked. Now things are different. The display shifted to show something that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. A fleet of Velanthari warships, hundreds of them, emerging from hidden bases across the Empire. Vessels that had been dormant for centuries, weapons that had not been fired in millennia, all awakening from their long sleep. "The Velanthari war fleet," Velros said quietly. "I ordered its activation 2 days ago. It will reach the warlord's fortress within the week, Your Majesty," Marcus said slowly. "This could start a war with the Consortium." "Yes," Velros agreed. "It could. Which is why I have requested support from your people as well." Another shift in the display. Alongside the Velanthari vessels, human ships were emerging from hyperspace. Earth's own fleet, smaller but fierce, their weapons glowing with readiness. "How did you—" Marcus started. "I contacted your government directly," Velros said. "I explained what happened to your son. I explained what you did on Station Cat 7. I told them that the Velanthari Empire wished to formalize our alliance in a way that has not been done in 3,000 years. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Ambassador Chun, I have invoked the Oath of Kinship, the ancient bond that was once reserved only for Velanthari noble houses. From this day forward, an attack on humanity is an attack on the Velanthari throne itself. Our fates are joined." Marcus was speechless. The Oath of Kinship was legendary. It meant that the full power of the Velanthari Empire would defend humanity as if humans were their own people. No species in history had ever been offered such an honor. "Why?" he finally managed to ask. "Why would you do this?" Velros looked at Ethan, who was sitting beside his father with wide eyes, not fully understanding what was happening but sensing its importance. "Because your son showed me something I had forgotten," the king said. "In 2,000 years, I had grown comfortable. I had accepted that some things simply were the way they were, that some battles could not be won, that some enemies could not be defeated. And then a human child fought off a poison that no one had ever survived, simply because he did not know he was supposed to die." He turned back to Marcus. "And you showed me something as well, Ambassador. Standing in that corridor, bleeding from a dozen wounds, refusing to fall. You reminded me what it means to truly fight for something. Not because victory is certain, but because the cause is right." The doors to the sanctum opened, and a messenger entered. "Your Majesty, the Sithrak Consortium has received our ultimatum. They have agreed to surrender the warlord responsible for the attack. Their fleet is standing down. Valros nodded as if he had expected nothing less. Good. See that he is brought before the Galactic Concord for trial. I want every species in the galaxy to see what happens to those who attack our allies. The messenger bowed and departed. Marcus shook his head in wonder. You ended a potential war without firing a single shot. The best victories are the ones that need no battle, Valros said. The consortium looked at our combined fleets and did the math. They realized that fighting us would cost them everything. And so they surrendered. He smiled slightly. Your people have a saying, I believe. Speak softly and carry a big stick. I have always found it to be good advice. 1 week later, King Valros stood before the assembled delegates of the Galactic Concord, the governing body of 100 species and 1,000 worlds. The great hall was vast beyond comprehension, filled with beings of every shape and size, all watching the Velanthari king with curiosity and concern. Fellow members of the Concord, Valros began, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. I come before you today to speak of humanity. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Humanity was still considered a newcomer, a minor species barely worth notice. What could the ancient Velanthari king possibly have to say about them? For 2 centuries, humans have been part of our galactic community. And for 2 centuries, many of us have dismissed them. We have called them mayflies, laughed at their short lives, and wondered how being so fragile could matter at all. Valros paused, his silver eyes sweeping across the assembly. I was wrong to think that way. We were all wrong. He told them the story. The shadow predator attack, the boy who should have died and did not, the father who charged into darkness armed with nothing but flares and fury. He spared no detail, painted no flattering picture of himself. I have lived for 2,000 years, he said. I have seen wonders that would break your minds. I have watched stars die, and I tell you now that I have never witnessed anything as remarkable as what I saw in that human child and his father. The chamber was silent now, every eye fixed on the king. Humans are not weak, Valros declared. They are the opposite of weak. They simply express their strength differently than we do. They do not live long, so they live intensely. They are not physically powerful, so they become mentally indomitable. They cannot outrun their enemies, so they outlast them instead. He spread all 4 of his arms wide. The shadow predator that bit young Ethan Chen expected prey. It found something far more dangerous. It found a creature that does not know how to give up. He turned to where Marcus and Ethan stood at the edge of the chamber, both dressed in formal attire, both looking uncertain about why they had been asked to attend Ambassador Chun. Valros called. Would you join me? Marcus walked forward slowly, Ethan beside him. The assembly watched in silence as the human father and son took their place next to the alien king. The galaxy has asked what humanity brings to the Concord, Valros said. I will tell you. He placed one hand on Marcus's shoulder and another on Ethan's. They bring something we immortals have forgotten. They bring urgency. They bring fire. They bring the knowledge that every moment matters, and that there is no enemy, no predator, no darkness that they will not face for those they love. His voice rose, filling the chamber with power and conviction. Do not make the mistake of underestimating them. I have seen what they are. They are not prey. They never were. They are persistence predators, evolved on a death world, tempered by 1,000,000 years of struggle. And now they walk among the stars as our equals. He looked directly at the delegates, his silver eyes burning with intensity. The Velanthari Empire has pledged itself to humanity through the oath of kinship. I recommend that others consider doing the same, because when the next great darkness comes, and it will come, I know who I want standing beside me. He smiled, and it was a smile full of respect and admiration. I want the species that does not know how to quit. The chamber erupted. Delegates from 100 worlds rose to their feet, some in shock, some in protest, but many in approval. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and everyone knew it. Marcus looked down at his son, who was staring up at the alien king with wonder in his eyes. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "did that really happen because of me?" Marcus hugged him tight. "It happened because you are stronger than anyone realized, buddy. You survived when you should not have. And you reminded a very old king what it means to fight for what matters." King Valros turned to them one last time as the chamber continued to roar with debate and excitement. "Humanity has found its place among the stars," he said quietly, "just for them. Not as fragile newcomers, but as the galaxy's most relentless survivors. I think we are all better for it." Ethan looked up at him and smiled. "Thank you for keeping my dad safe." The ancient king knelt down so he was at eye level with the human boy. "Thank you for showing me what courage truly looks like." And in that moment, standing together in the heart of galactic power, a wounded human diplomat and his remarkable son and an alien king who had rediscovered hope, the future suddenly seemed very bright indeed. The frozen moon of Keth hung in the void like a ball of gray ice, its surface scarred by ancient mining operations and the passage of forgotten centuries. Station Keth 7 rose from the landscape like a metal skeleton, its towers dark and silent against the star-filled sky. King Valros studied the structure through the viewport of his landing craft. Beside him, Ambassador Marcus Chun checked his plasma rifle for a third time. His movements calm and practiced, intelligence suggests at least 20 consortium mercenaries inside, the king's tactical officer reported, and an unknown number of shadow predators. "Our scans cannot penetrate the station's interference field. Then we go in blind," Valros said. "It changes nothing." We knew this would not be easy. The landing party touched down on a frozen platform outside the station's main entrance. The cold was intense, biting through even the advanced Voluntary armor. Marcus felt it in his bones but ignored it. He had trained in worse conditions on Earth. Humans can survive this temperature? One of the Voluntary soldiers asked with surprise. "We can survive almost anything," Marcus replied. "At least for a while." They moved through the station's outer corridors in tactical formation, weapons ready, senses alert. The darkness here was thick and heavy, broken only by the occasional flicker of emergency lighting. Every shadow seemed to move, to breathe, to watch. The attack came without warning. A shape exploded from the darkness, pure black against the dim light, and slammed into one of the Voluntary warriors. The soldier's energy shield flared and died in an instant, and the shadow predator's claws tore through his armor like paper. He screamed once and then was silent. "Contact!" The tactical officer shouted. Multiple contacts. More shapes emerged from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. They moved like liquid darkness, flowing around obstacles, ignoring conventional physics. The Voluntary soldiers opened fire, energy beams cutting through the air. But the creatures were fast, impossibly fast. Marcus rolled behind a support pillar as a shadow predator lunged at him. He fired his plasma rifle and the creature shrieked, wounded but not dead. It circled around, looking for another angle of attack. "Their shields do not work," one soldier yelled. "The creatures phase right through them." King Valros fought with a grace that belied his ancient years, his forearms wielding 2 blades and 2 energy pistols simultaneously. He cut down one creature and shot another, but more kept coming. They were being overwhelmed. Marcus watched and analyzed, his mind racing. Something about the creature's movement patterns caught his attention. They were aggressive, relentless, but they hesitated near certain areas. He looked around, trying to identify the pattern. Then he saw it. A heating unit on the wall, still functioning despite the station's abandonment. The creatures were avoiding it. They were giving it a wide berth. They are afraid of heat. He shouted. Infrared radiation disrupts their shadow forms. Valros heard him and understood immediately. All units switched to thermal weapons. Emergency flares, plasma cutters, anything that generates heat. The tide of battle began to turn. The Valanthari soldiers activated their emergency equipment, filling the corridor with blazing light and searing heat. The shadow predators screamed and retreated, their bodies flickering and unstable. Push forward. Valros commanded. Do not let them regroup. They fought their way deeper into the station, leaving dead creatures and wounded soldiers behind. Marcus moved like a man possessed, his rifle never stopping, his eyes scanning every shadow. He had been a Marine for 15 years, had fought in a dozen campaigns, but he had never faced anything like this. The creatures kept coming. For every one they killed, 2 more seemed to appear. The Valanthari soldiers fell one by one, their ancient training no match for an enemy that could slip through walls and ignore their shields. Then the worst happened. A coordinated attack from 3 directions at once separated the group. Marcus found himself cut off from the main force, trapped in a side corridor with only King Valros beside him. Your Majesty, we need to fall back. Marcus shouted over the chaos. There is no falling back, Valros replied grimly. Look, Marcus turned and felt his blood run cold. Shadow predators were emerging from every direction. Dozens of them, their star-like eyes gleaming with hunger. They had been herded into a trap, so this is how it ends, Valros said quietly. I apologize, Ambassador. I brought you here to die. Marcus looked at the king, at this ancient being who had lived for 2,000 years, who had seen wonders beyond human imagination. And something inside him refused to accept defeat. No, he said firmly. This is not how it ends. He reached into his emergency kit and pulled out every flare he had. There were 6 of them. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. What are you doing? Valros asked. What humans do, Marcus replied. I am refusing to give up. He ignited all 6 flares at once and charged directly at the largest group of shadow predators. The creatures shrieked and scattered, their forms destabilizing in the intense light. Marcus kept moving, throwing flares, firing his rifle, screaming defiance at the darkness. The creatures struck him again and again. He felt claws tear through his armor, felt pain explode across his body in a dozen places. Blood ran down his face, his arms, his legs. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Ethan was waiting for him back at the palace, and he had promised to come home. King Valros watched in amazement as the human fought. Marcus was bleeding from wounds that would have killed a Valanthari. His movements should have been slowing, his body failing. But instead, he seemed to grow stronger, more determined, more dangerous. The human was standing over him now, shielding him with his own body, facing down creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. And he was smiling. Come on. Marcus roared at the shadows. Is that all you have? The creatures hesitated. They were predators, evolved to hunt prey that ran, that fled, that surrendered. They did not understand this human who bled and burned and still refused to fall. In that moment of hesitation, reinforcements arrived. The remaining Valanthari soldiers had regrouped and pushed through the station. They poured fire into the corridor, and the shadow predators finally retreated. Melting back into the darkness from which they had come, Marcus swayed on his feet. The world was spinning around him, and he was pretty sure he was about to collapse. Strong hands caught him before he fell. I have you, Ambassador, King Valros said softly. I have you. Then a holographic image flickered to life in the center of the corridor. A figure appeared, tall and serpentine, with scales of green and gold and eyes of pure malice. A Sithrak, and from the crown on his head, their leader, King Valros. The warlord sneered. How disappointing. I expected you to die here. Instead, you merely lose most of your soldiers. A poor trade, I think. You will pay for this, Valros said coldly. Will I? The Galactic Concord will do nothing. They never do. Your precious human alliance will fail. You will retreat to your crystal palaces and pretend this never happened. It is what you always do. Marcus lifted his head, blood dripping from his wounds, and looked at the hologram. Despite everything, he smiled. You made one mistake, he said quietly. The warlord turned to him with disdain. And what mistake would that be, human? Marcus's smile widened into something fierce and terrible. You hurt my son, the warlord laughed. Your son? Your son is nothing. A mayfly child of a mayfly species. What could you possibly do to threaten me? Ask your shadow predators, Marcus said. Ask them how it felt to face a human who would not stop. Then imagine what happens when you face all of us. For just a moment, uncertainty flickered in the warlord's serpentine eyes. Then the hologram vanished. King Valros looked at the wounded human in his arms, at this fragile creature who had just faced down the horrors of the universe and emerged unbowed. And he made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. Ambassador Chun, he said formally. I believe it is time we discussed a new kind of alliance. Marcus nodded weakly. I think I would like that, Your Majesty. Then he passed out. 3 days after Ethan opened his eyes, King Valros stood before the assembled nobles of his court and made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the entire palace. I invoke the right of the royal hunt, he declared, his voice echoing through the great hall. I will personally track and destroy the shadow predator that attacked our guest, and I will bring justice to those who sent it. The court erupted in chaos. Advisors shouted objections. Nobles whispered frantically to one another. The royal hunt had not been invoked in 3,000 years, not since the days of Valros's grandfather. It was considered a relic of a more barbaric age, something no civilized king would ever undertake. Your Majesty, the chief advisor pleaded, stepping forward with all 4 arms raised. This is madness. Kings do not hunt. Your life is too valuable to risk on such a dangerous. A child was attacked at my home. Valros cut him off. Under my protection, by my honor and the honor of my ancestors, I will see this wrong made right. The matter is not open for discussion. Ambassador Marcus Chen watched from the side of the hall, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Ethan sat in a hover chair, still weak but recovering rapidly. The physicians had been amazed by how quickly the boy was healing. Another impossible thing to add to the growing list. When the court finally quieted, Valros turned to his intelligence minister. Report, what have you discovered about the attack? The minister stepped forward, her silver eyes troubled. Your Majesty, our investigation has confirmed that the shadow predator was deliberately smuggled onto our world. The creature came through the black market, purchased and transported by agents of the Scytherek Consortium. A murmur rippled through the court. The Scytherek were an old enemy, a faction of merchants and warlords who had opposed the Valenthari Empire for centuries. They had never dared to strike so directly before. Their goal appears to have been the destruction of our alliance with humanity. The minister continued. If the ambassador's son had died, it would have created an incident. Humans would have blamed us for failing to protect one of their children. The alliance would have collapsed before it truly began. Marcus stepped forward, anger burning in his eyes. They tried to kill my son to start a war between our peoples? It appears so, Ambassador. The Scytherek fear what humanity and the Valenthari could accomplish together. They sought to prevent that union at any cost. Valros nodded slowly. Where is the creature now? Our trackers have followed its trail to an abandoned mining station on our moon. Station Cath 7. It was shut down centuries ago. The consortium appears to be using it as a base of operations. Then that is where I will go. Valros said, "Your Majesty," Ambassador Chen spoke up. "I request permission to accompany you." The court fell silent. Every eye turned to the human. Valros studied him with curiosity. "Ambassador, this is a voluntary matter. You are a diplomat, not a warrior. I cannot ask you to risk your life." Marcus shook his head. "You are not asking. I am volunteering. That creature bit my son. Those people tried to murder my child to serve their political games. This is my matter as much as it is yours." "Father," Ethan said weakly from his chair. "Be careful." Marcus knelt beside his son and took his hand. "I will be back before you know it, buddy. I promise." Valros watched the exchange with growing interest. "Ambassador, I mean no offense, but humans are not known for their combat abilities. Your species is physically weaker than most. Your sense is less acute, your lifespans." "Your Majesty," Marcus interrupted respectfully. "May I tell you something about my people?" The king raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Before I was a diplomat, I was a soldier. A marine, humanity's military force. I spent 15 years fighting in wars across 3 star systems. I have killed enemies that were bigger, stronger, and faster than me. I did it not because I was superior, but because I refused to stop." He paused, meeting the king's silver eyes directly. "You know what we call ourselves back on Earth? Persistence predators. Our ancestors did not have claws or fangs or venom. They could not outrun the animals they hunted. So they did something no other creature on our world could do. They followed their prey for days, never stopping, never resting, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion." Marcus smiled grimly. "We hunted creatures to extinction not with strength, but with stubbornness. We evolved to outlast anything that tried to kill us. That shadow predator thought my son would be easy prey. It was wrong. And whoever sent it will learn the same lesson." King Valros was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his ancient face. "Very well, Ambassador. You will join the hunt. But you will follow my commands." "This is not a negotiation," Marcus nodded. "Understood, Your Majesty." The preparations began immediately. Valros selected his finest warriors, veterans of 1,000 battles, equipped with weapons that could level mountains. Ambassador Chen was given voluntary armor and a plasma rifle, which he handled with the easy familiarity of someone who had held many weapons before Ethan was placed under the protection of the king's personal guard, the most elite soldiers in the empire. He would remain in the palace, safe and watched over, until his father and the king returned. "Your blood may hold secrets that could change everything," the lead physician had told him. "You are the first being to ever survive shadow predator venom. We need to study what your body did, learn from it. You may have given us a gift that will save countless lives." Ethan did not feel like a gift. He felt like a scared kid who wanted his dad to come home on the eve of departure. King Valros visited him in his recovery room. The king moved quietly for someone so tall, and Ethan almost did not notice him until he spoke. "You are worried about your father." It was not a question. Ethan nodded anyway. Valros sat down in a chair that was far too small for him and looked out the window at the glowing city. "I have lived for 2,000 years, young one. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched friends grow old and die while I remained unchanged. Do you know what I have learned in all that time?" Ethan shook his head. "That courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being afraid and acting anyway. Your father is afraid. I can see it in his eyes. But he's going anyway, because he loves you, and because he believes that some things are worth fighting for." The king turned to look at Ethan directly. "Your people fascinate me. You live such short lives, yet you burn so brightly. You know that every moment matters, so you waste none of them. That is something my people have forgotten over the long millennia. Will you keep him safe?" Ethan asked quietly. Valros hesitated. Then he reached out with one of his four hands and gently touched Ethan's shoulder. "I will bring your father home," he said. "You have my word as king." The next morning, the hunting party departed. 12 Valentari warriors and one human diplomat, traveling to a frozen moon to face creatures of living shadow and the enemies who had unleashed them as the ship rose into the sky. Ethan watched from his window until it disappeared among the stars. Then he closed his eyes and did something he had not done since his mother died. He prayed far away. In the darkness of Station Keth 7, the Shadow Predator waited. But it was not alone. The consortium had prepared a welcome for the king and his hunters. They had brought more of the creatures. Many more, and they were hungry. The Royal Medical Sanctum was a place of quiet miracles, where Valentari physicians had cured diseases and healed wounds for 10,000 years. Tonight, it was a place of desperate chaos. Ethan lay on a bed of soft light, his small body surrounded by machines that hummed and beeped and projected holographic displays of his failing organs. The black veins from the shadow predator bite had spread across his chest and were creeping toward his heart. His skin was pale as paper, and his breath came in short, ragged gasps. Ambassador Marcus Chun sat beside his son, holding Ethan's hand and refusing to move. His eyes were red from crying, but his jaw was set with fierce determination. He had lost his wife to cancer a year ago, and he would not lose his son too. He could not, Ambassador, the lead physician said gently, her four hands folded in a gesture of sympathy. You should prepare yourself. The venom has progressed too far. No being in recorded history has ever survived a shadow predator bite. Then he will be the first. Marcus said through clenched teeth. The doors to the sanctum opened, and King Valeros entered. His advisors tried to follow, but he raised one hand and they stopped. This was not a moment for politics or protocol, Your Majesty. The lead physician bowed. You should not be here. We do not know if the venom could somehow affect. I am exactly where I need to be, Valeros interrupted calmly. He walked to the bed and looked down at the small human boy who was fighting for his life. A child was harmed under my protection, in my palace, on my world. This is not merely a medical matter. It is a matter of royal honor. He turned to the physicians. Tell me everything. The lead physician pulled up a holographic display showing Ethan's cellular structure. Shadow predator venom works by dissolving the bonds between cells. It essentially causes the body to fall apart from the inside. In every documented case, death occurs within 2 to 4 hours. How long has it been? Valeros asked. 3 hours and 47 minutes. The king frowned. He should already be dead. Yes, Your Majesty. That is what we cannot explain. She zoomed in on the display, and even Valeros, who had lived for over 2,000 years, had to lean closer in disbelief. The venom was still active in Ethan's bloodstream, still attacking his cells. But something was fighting back. Tiny proteins were swarming around the poison, binding to it, neutralizing it. Why is that? Valeros demanded. His immune system. The physician whispered. His body is creating new antibodies in real time, adapting to counter a toxin it has never encountered before. We have never seen anything like this. It should be impossible. Marcus looked up, hope flickering in his exhausted eyes. Does that mean he might survive? The physician hesitated. Ambassador, I cannot promise anything. His fever is dangerously high. His body is burning itself up trying to fight the venom. Even if he survives the poison, the strain might. He is strong, Marcus cut her off. Stronger than you know. Stronger than any of you know. King Valeros watched the human father with growing respect. There was no surrender in this man, no acceptance of defeat. He held on to hope like a weapon, refusing to let it go no matter how dark things became hours past. The physicians worked frantically, supporting Ethan's organs, managing his fever, doing everything they could to give his body time to fight. Marcus never left his side, not even to eat or drink. He talked to Ethan constantly, telling him stories about Earth, about his mother, about all the adventures they would have when he woke up. And then, as the first light of dawn began to glow through the sanctum's windows, something changed. Ethan's monitors began to stabilize. His fever dropped. The black veins on his skin started to fade. The physicians stared at their displays in stunned silence. "That is impossible," one of them whispered. "The venom," the lead physician said slowly, her voice shaking. "It is being neutralized. His body has created a complete defense. He's actually fighting it off." Marcus let out a sob of relief and pressed his forehead against his son's hand. "I knew it. I knew you could do it." Ethan's eyes fluttered open. "Dad," he croaked weakly. "I am here, buddy. I am right here. You are going to be okay." King Velros stepped back, watching the reunion with an expression of wonder. In all his centuries of life, he had never witnessed anything like this. A child, a human child, had done something that the greatest warriors and most advanced medicines of 100 civilizations had failed to do. He turned to the lead physician. "Explain this to me. How is this possible?" The physician took a deep breath. "Your Majesty, there are stories, old research from when humans first joined the galactic community. We dismissed most of it as exaggeration, but now I am not so sure." "What stories?" "Humans evolved on a world they call Earth. It is what we would classify as a Category 12 death world. Extreme temperature variations, constant predation, diseases beyond counting. They should have gone extinct 1,000 times over. Instead, they adapted." She pulled up a new display showing human biology. "Their immune systems are not like ours, Your Majesty. Where our bodies learn to fight specific threats, human bodies learn to fight anything. They produce antibodies at an incredible rate. They develop fevers that would kill most species, but somehow strengthen them. They heal from wounds that would be fatal to us. And there is something else," she continued. "Something we have never fully understood. Humans are persistent predators. On their homeworld, they did not hunt by being faster or stronger than their prey. They hunted by never giving up. They would chase an animal for days, never stopping, never resting, until their target collapsed from exhaustion." King Velros looked back at Ethan, who was now weakly sipping water while his father supported his head. "You are saying his body simply refused to die?" "In essence, yes. His cellular structure treated the venom as prey and hunted it down. His immune system did not know that survival was impossible, so it did not stop trying." Velros was silent for a long moment. He had lived for 2,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall, and watched stars be born and die. He had thought he understood everything there was to understand about the universe. But this small, fragile, short-lived creature had surprised him in a way nothing had surprised him in centuries. He walked slowly to the bed where Marcus and Ethan sat together. The ambassador looked up at him with gratitude shining in his eyes. "Your Majesty, I cannot thank you enough for what your physicians have done." "They did very little," Velros said quietly. "Your son saved himself. We merely watched." He knelt down so that he was at eye level with Ethan. The boy looked exhausted, pale, weak. But his eyes were clear, and there was something in them that Velros recognized. The same stubborn fire he had seen in the father young Ethan. The king said, "You have accomplished something that no being in the history of our galaxy has ever accomplished. You have survived the unsurvivable. Do you understand what that means?" Ethan shook his head tiredly. Velros smiled, a rare expression on his ancient face. "It means that you are remarkable. It means that your people are remarkable. And it means that whoever brought that creature to my world made a very serious mistake. he stood and turned to his advisors, who had gathered at the sanctum's entrance. His voice, when he spoke, was cold as winter and hard as iron. Find out how that shadow predator got into my palace. Find out who sent it. And find out why. And when we find them, Your Majesty? One advisor asked King Valeros, looked back at the human boy who had defied death itself, at the human father who had refused to give up hope. And for the first time in 3,000 years, a fire kindled in his ancient heart. When we find them, he said softly, they will learn what it means to make an enemy of the Valentari throne. In the bed behind him, Ethan drifted into a peaceful sleep, unaware that his survival had just set in motion events that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. The ship descended through clouds of purple and gold, and 12-year-old Ethan Chen pressed his face against the viewport window with wonder in his eyes. He had never seen anything so beautiful in his entire life. Dad, look at those towers, he whispered, pointing at the crystalline spires that rose from the planet's surface like frozen lightning. They glowed with soft inner light, and the whole city beneath them sparkled as if made from living gemstones. His father, Ambassador Marcus Chun, placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. He had worked for 3 years to make this visit happen, and seeing his son's amazement made every sacrifice worth it. Welcome to the throne of eternal light, Marcus said quietly. The Valentari homeworld, one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, and now, hopefully, humanity's newest ally. The shuttle touched down on a landing platform made of smooth white stone, and when the doors opened, warm air rushed in carrying the scent of flowers that Ethan could not name. Everything here felt ancient and powerful, like stepping into a dream from a forgotten age. A delegation waited for them at the bottom of the ramp. Tall figures with 4 arms each, their skin the color of pale moonlight, their eyes like pools of liquid silver. The Valentari were beautiful in a way that made Ethan feel very small and very young. At the front stood the tallest of them all, wearing robes of deep blue that seemed to flow like water around his body. A crown of woven light rested on his brow, and when he spoke, his voice was deep and musical. Ambassador Chun, the figure said, extending 2 of his 4 hands in greeting. I am Valeros Kethander, king of the Valentari Empire. Welcome to our world. Marcus bowed respectfully and took the king's hands. Your Majesty, the honor is ours. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity. King Valeros studied the human ambassador with curiosity. Humans were so strange to him. These creatures who lived barely a century, who aged and died in what felt like the blink of an eye to his people. The Valentari called them mayflies and wondered how beings with such short lives could accomplish anything at all. But the humans had surprised everyone. They had emerged from their small blue planet only 200 years ago, and already they had fought in the border wars, pushed back the Crixian raiders, and earned a seat at the Galactic Concord. There was something about them that demanded attention. The king's silver eyes moved to the boy standing beside the ambassador, and he tilted his head. And who is this young one? My son, Ethan, Marcus said proudly. I hope you do not mind that I brought him. His mother passed away last year, and I did not want to leave him alone. Something flickered in the king's ancient eyes. Sympathy, perhaps, or recognition of a pain he understood. You are welcome here, young Ethan. May you find wonder in our world? Ethan swallowed nervously and managed a small bow. Thank you, Your Majesty. The formal ceremonies began, and Ethan tried his best to pay attention, but the palace was so full of incredible things that his eyes kept wandering. There were fountains that flowed upward instead of down, gardens where the plants sang soft melodies, and windows that showed views of distant stars, as if the walls themselves were doorways to other worlds. By the time the evening banquet began, Ethan was restless. The adults talked endlessly about trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, and none of it made any sense to him. He picked at strange food that tasted like honey and smoke, and he watched the voluntary nobles glide across the great hall like ghosts made of moonlight. "Dad," he whispered, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Can I go explore a little?" Marcus frowned. "Stay close, Ethan. Don't go anywhere you're not supposed to. I promise," Ethan said. Already sliding out of his chair, he slipped through the crowd and found a side door that led to a corridor of polished stone. The air was cooler here, and the sounds of the banquet faded behind him as he walked. He knew he should turn back, but curiosity pulled him forward like a hook in his chest. The corridor ended at a spiral staircase that descended into darkness, and Ethan hesitated. A sign on the wall showed symbols he could not read, but something about the way they were arranged suggested a warning. He should definitely turn back now. Instead, he went down the lower gardens where nothing like the bright, singing spaces above. Here, the plants glowed with pale blue light, and shadows gathered in the corners like living things. The air smelled of earth and something else, something sharp and metallic that made Ethan's skin prickle. "Hello?" He called softly, and his voice echoed strangely in the darkness. Something moved. Ethan froze. He saw it now, a shape in the shadows that did not belong. It was darker than the darkness around it, a patch of absolute blackness that seemed to swallow the light. And it was watching him. He took a step backward, and the thing lunged. Pain exploded in his arm as something cold and sharp tore through his sleeve and into his flesh. He screamed and fell, and the creature was on top of him, a massive shadow and teeth and eyes that burned like dying stars. Then light blazed through the garden as guards rushed down the stairs. Energy weapons fired, and the shadow creature shrieked and fled into the darkness. But the damage was done. Ethan lay on the ground, clutching his arm. Black veins were already spreading from the wound, crawling up toward his shoulder like roots of poison. The pain was incredible, worse than anything he had ever felt. Shadow predator. One of the guards shouted, "Impossible! How did it get here?" Another guard was already calling for help. "Medical team to the lower gardens. We have a victim. It's the human child. Repeat, the ambassador's son has been bitten." The world began to spin around Ethan. He could hear his father screaming his name somewhere above, could hear the thunder of running feet. But everything was growing dark and cold, and the last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was the face of King Valorous appearing above him. Silver eyes wide with shock. "Get the physicians," the king commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "All of them, now." And then there was nothing but darkness and the slow, terrible spread of venom through a 12-year-old boy's veins. Venom that had killed every creature it had ever touched. Venom that no one in the history of the galaxy had ever survived. The alarms were still screaming when Ambassador Marcus Chen burst into the garden and fell to his knees beside his son. He gathered Ethan's small body in his arms and looked up at the alien king with tears streaming down his face. "Save him," he begged. "Please. He's all I have left." King Valorous looked at the human father cradling his dying child, and something stirred in his ancient heart. Something that had not stirred in a very long time. "I will do everything in my power," he said quietly. But even as he spoke the words, he knew the truth that his physicians would soon confirm. Shadow predator venom was always fatal. There was no cure, no treatment, no hope. The human boy had hours to live. At most, and somewhere in the darkness of the lower gardens, hidden in shadows where no light could reach. The creature that had bitten him waited and watched. Its work was done. Soon the boy would die. The alliance would shatter, and the ones who had sent it here would have their victory, or so they believed.